Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode. As we release this episode on Veterans Day, November 11th, 2025, we're going to go back and talk about some football history with our friend Timothy P. Brown, as he tells us a story of a man named Bibb Graves, a football legend that you might not know much about. But we're going to learn about right now with Tim in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another Tuesday as we get to dive into the football archaeology with Tim Brown of that great website. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Thank you, Darren. Going to dive in as if I was diving into a grave.
Diving into grave. Well, that sounds a little bit morbid, but
Yeah, I know.
very befitting as you segue into this recent tidbit of yours that you wrote. It's titled Bibb Graves, founding member of Alabama and Texas football. That's a big statement there, Tim. What can you tell us about Bibb Graves?
So I've never met a guy named Bibb before, but that was his mother's maiden name, family name. So
I've been told I should wear a bib before.
Yeah, well, maybe you should.
Especially as I get older here, I've been told that many times.
Yeah, so this guy, he played a long time ago, and I, a little while back, I did a story based on 4 images from the first year of Auburn football. So it was their first year of playing was 1892 and into 1893, because the last game of that season was played in February of 93 when they played Alabama. And so as it turned out, basically the story is about Auburn football and, reviewing these images that a collector friend, John Antonio, had and allowed me to use. So, there are people out there, if you're into the history of teams, you might know some of the players who played in the first year that Yale played, or the first year that Harvard or Princeton played. Typically, I would guess most people have no idea, who was on the first year of their favorite team. Even the pro teams, people probably don't know. But so every team had a first team. And in the case of Bibb Graves, he was on the first team for 2 pretty storied programs. So he's kind of a campus leader sort of guy. His family was in politics, and his grandfather and his great grandfather had been governors of Alabama. And he ended up becoming twice elected governor of Alabama himself. But so he goes to Alabama. So he's on the other team, not on the Auburn team, but he plays in the first Iron Bowl in February 1993. But he was he was a substitute. He was campus leader. He was one of the captains in the Corps of Cadets at Alabama that year. Just kind of a prominent guy. And so he graduates after lettering at Alabama. So he goes, after the summer, he goes to Austin, Texas, and he enrolls at University of Texas Law School. Well, back then, the whole who's eligible and who isn't, and can graduate students play and professional students play, blah, blah, blah. None of that was really very well defined, especially at a place like Texas, which was just starting a program. And so he enrolls in law school and finds out that they're starting a football team. So he raises his hand and says, I played at Alabama. I know how to play this game. So he joins the team. And, he was a sub at Texas too. I have no idea if it was because he just wasn't that good, or because he didn't have the time to put in, or, whatever it may have been. But he's listed several times in the game rosters or in the previews of the games as being a substitute. I'm not sure he ever got into a game. And I should say that Jonathan Wells, who writes a site called Journey Through Texas and Longhorn History, he had read my story about the Auburn, Alabama stuff. And he said, hey, by the way, did you know this guy, Bibb Graves, played at both schools? Because
Hmm.
he'd written a story about Texas's first team and who the members were. So, he was aware of it. Um, and so anyways, he let me know about it. And so I said, hey, you mind if I write an article about, this guy?
Hmm.
So anyways, so that's what I did. And but he ended up, the funny thing is he stayed at Texas for 1 year, then he transfers to Yale. I did, and he finished law school there and did very well there. Um, I looked to see if there was any evidence of him, playing, even scrimmaging or anything at Yale. No evidence of that.
That would have
And
been the Walter Camp era,
yeah,
in the
well, he would have
1890s.
been, Camp would have certainly been,
Hmm.
Camp was done playing by then, but he just by like a year because he played like
Hmm.
6 years.
Right.
And but he would have been around the program certainly, though he went out to Stanford somewhere in
I
that.
think that was like late 1890s, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Um, so anyways, uh, so then he goes back to Bama and becomes a I think kind of a well-known lawyer in Montgomery and um, is involved in the Alabama militia. And as a result, he ends up in a field artillery unit in World War One. So he's over in France. Da 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 da. Comes back and in the uh, at one point in the mid, they were in the late 20s. He's elected governor of Alabama. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, I don't know if you couldn't serve consecutive terms at the time, but there was a period where between his first and second term. So he served 2 terms as governor, and he was the governor at the time that they built, Denny Stadium, which is now, or Denny Field, which is now Bryant Denny. And I think, partly because he was governor and partly probably because he was a football fan, he would attend a fair number of games.
Hmm.
He went to he went north when they played at Wisconsin. He was at Florida when they opened up their stadium, the same stadium that they play in now, Florida. Anyways, and he went to 1 or 2 Rose Bowls when Bama was in the Rose Bowl,
Hmm.
back then. So I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting character. But the chances of somebody, it'd be one thing if he was on the first team at Akron, sorry Akron, but
Hmm.
Akron and you know Kent
Wabash or
State
something. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Wabash, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. And maybe there's somebody out there who was, but he
Hmm.
was, first team for Bama and Texas, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Especially, he'd probably be really proud now that they're both in the SEC and playing against each other, and and competing for league titles and national championships. That's kind of
Yeah, but I'm pretty
so.
sure we know where his loyalties would lie.
Uh, Yale.
No,
Oh, okay.
it's the one that starts with an A.
Oh, yeah, I guess when you're governor of the state, you
Yeah.
got to keep your loyalty there. So, yeah, very very interesting guy. Boy, what a well-rounded life that the man led. Between military hero, football star, or football player at different places, and governor, and wow, pretty interesting fella.
Yeah, I never saw anything about him coaching, which I, thought maybe he would, but
He was too busy.
yeah, that's true.
He had a lot going on.
He had things to do.
Yeah. But this is another example of grabbing somebody from the past that, because till I read your tidbit, I have never heard of this gentleman before. But definitely he played a part in football history that's important to us that like to reflect back on that, and our listeners love to do that. And you get to preserve that, not only the game's history but this man's history. And you do this quite a bit in your tidbits that you come out with a few times a week. Maybe you could share with listeners how they can partake in some of these.
Yeah, just go to footballarchaeology.com. It's a Substack site. Uh, if you subscribe, you'll get an email every time I publish an article. Otherwise, bookmark it. Follow me on the Substack app or follow me on Blue Sky. because on, everything gets up every time I publish, I update, on those as well. So.
All right. Well, Tim, we sure appreciate you joining us here this evening and each and every Tuesday, and we'd love to talk to you again next week about some more great football history.
Looking forward to it.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.